Hey everyone, I'm Selenis Crafts, and if you don't know who I am, I make plush dolls, sewing patterns, embroidery files and video tutorials on sewing plush, and I love what I do. This might be a bit rambly while I try and get sort of thoughts in order, and if there's any cuts in the footage it's just because I've sat staring into space for far too long. When a creator is setting up a pattern, a sewing pattern for sale, or embroidery files or something like that, it's more like an asset. It's something that someone is going to buy to then make into something else. So it's kind of similar to things like stock music, stock footage, custom fonts. And if you've ever been to buy any of those, you might have seen certain websites will have different tiers of pricing. Usually things like personal license versus commercial license. So the main difference between a personal license and a commercial license is personal is usually for not-for-profit, so you can take the image that you've bought, you can use it for personal, you can put it in the back of your other art or put it on a t-shirt or on a card, as long as it's not profiting. You can't put it on a t-shirt and then sell it. If you want to sell that t-shirt, you have to purchase a commercial license. And those can come in tiers of their own, sort of, for example, tier 1 you can sell up to 100 units, and tier 2 up to 1,000, so on and so forth. And each creator's terms and licenses are going to be different based on how they view the file, how they want the file to be used. And that's the same for pattern making and pattern sellers. So you might find when buying patterns that some of them are personal use only, so they say you can buy it, you can make things from it, just you're not allowed to sell anything. And others, you're allowed to sell things from it, or you have to purchase an ongoing license. And a common one is that you can do X, Y, and Z with the pattern, but you have to credit the artist. And I'm one of those artists. I asked for credit, and there's kind of a few reasons that I think credit is important and that I asked for it. And the first is that I love to see stuff that people have made with my stuff, with my assets. You know, I'll get tagged in something and it's just they've taken my pattern and made something so amazing and something I would never have thought to make, could never have dreamed up, but they've made it, and then I get to see it, and then I also get to share it to my timeline and go, hey everybody come and look at this, and it's great. And there's sort of a warm fuzzy feeling from tagging each other in the work that that they've done with the what you've provided. Everybody wins. There's also the fact that at the end of the day, as a business, pattern making is kind of a long slog. You're not just making the doll and then selling it, you have to do a lot of tests. You're reformatting the pattern for distribution in a way that other people can learn to make it. So sometimes you can put, hundreds of hours into making a pattern work and be good and consistent, so it can take a while for them to break even. My anthro pattern is definitely one that has done well for itself, but I have others where I've put a lot of work in, a lot of love, and I adore them, and they've got like 10 sales in 2 years. So I think acknowledging a creator when you've used something that they made is important for also helping with visibility. And it's kind of a two-way street, but I think it helps to make the original pattern more visible. There's also kind of a more almost sinister reason as well. As of late, there's been really good pattern makers making quite popular patterns, and some of those generally ask for credit, but then the patterns are not being credited properly by the people using them, and they're being distributed around to the point that there's confusion as to who made it, to the point that the original pattern makers are being accosted, they're being shouted at in a public setting for stealing the pattern that they made, because people don't realise that they are the creator. They believe other people have made it, and props and mad respect to the people who've had that happen to them, because I think I'd wither up in a ball and die. So, as I said, I am one of those creators that ask for credit when you use my items. I don't have many terms of use, really. It's just the credit where you post in a public setting, so on social media, Etsy, that kind of place. Just a couple words, pattern by silliness. And the other term is I ask you not to share the pattern. And that kind of covers kind of a broad sense of the meaning of share. It can mean please don't send the files to anybody else, they're for your eyes only, so don't go around giving it to your grandma and your friends and your neighbours. It also means don't be taking photographs or screenshots of the pattern pieces and plastering them everywhere, and also not to be sending them to a factory for mass production. I don't allow commercial use of my work, and it is stated in there. It's just like do not share, and this includes no commercial use, no sending it to a factory. One of the reasons I'm kind of wary about factory use is places like China have a different sort of their copyright laws aren't exactly the same. I've heard of artists having pins made by Chinese factories, and then later on finding out that the pin molds that were made were then sold on, and there are knockoffs being printed and sold in places like AliExpress, which is kind of annoying to say the least. And where in Europe and America you'd have more of an immediate leg to stand on with getting that sort of thing stopped, when it comes to getting a factory in China to stop, there's a lot more fighting to be had, and I'd really rather not have that fighting. So on Saturday, a couple of days ago, I was checking on Facebook, and I found a post. Someone was selling on some plush they'd had commissioned. I don't know why they were selling, but they were. And one of them had some eyes that I had designed, some embroidered eyes, and they'd named the artist that had originally made them. And I thought, I don't know, never heard of them. I'll go and have a look, give them a follow, check them out. I liked the plush from the photograph. So I checked the Facebook out, and yeah, they were using a lot of my embroidery designs, quite a few. Quite a few. I don't want to put on a definite percentage of what I think they were using, but quite a large number of their posts featured plush that we use with my assets. And this does happen. Occasionally you'll come across in the wild somebody who's used your stuff and not mentioned anything. And usually when that happens, I send them a little message, just like a, hey, thanks for using my stuff, but in the future could you just, pop my name in the post to say where you got the files. So my plan originally was to do that. But then some other plush caught my eye in the page. They were being sold for $25, which didn't seem right to me for what their page was like. It seemed quite cheap. So I looked a little bit closer, and they were factory plush. They had been manufactured by a factory, and they had used some of my eye designs. So at that point, it wasn't just I'm gonna nudge them and just remind them that my terms include credit. It was, I'm gonna have to ask them to stop, because that's wildly against my terms of service. So I went a little bit deeper into the Facebook page just to double check exactly what was being factory produced and what was being handmade, so that I had I wasn't charging in going this and this is against my rules, only to find that it was handmade. So I was double checking everything that was factory made. And they had two other designs factory made that were using eye designs from two other artists. I have got in touch with them. One of them has got back to me. They're kind of upset, they're quite upset, and they weren't quite sure how to proceed. So we talked about that for a while. And the other hasn't got back to me yet. I don't think they've seen the message. It's probably got lost in the way. But then, as I was looking, I came across another post, and in that post they had my anthro pattern, and they had traced around the pattern pieces, so I could see the shape. The outlines were mine. There was lettering on the hips for marking matchup. The letters match up, so the leg to the body, you match the letters so that you know where you're going. And the letters were all the same in the same placement, so it was clearly mine, but they had traced these pattern pieces, laid them out on the table, and taken a photograph. And that one was really, it was kind of shocking. I've never seen that. Nobody's ever done that before that I've seen. So I was really kind of, at that point, upset, and it was like, any sort of, I'll just shoot them a quick message, just vanished. It was like, I am really going to have to take, I'm going to have to, yikes, I'm going to have to be really serious about this. So at that point, after finding the pattern post, I started reaching out to community groups and people with legal experience. I know that usually the first course of action is a cease and desist letter, but I wanted to get a bit of advice before I started writing anything up. And shortly after making the post, I got 2 messages. And the first was from someone whose name I didn't know, and it said, "Hi, I saw your post about the stuff being used by a factory. Can you send me screenshots of who's doing it, so that I know we're on the right page?" And I was a little bit like, well, who is this? But then I noticed at the top where, a message says, this person would like to message you and they're from here and they did this and you have this in common. They'd been to the same high school as the maker that had been using my designs. So immediately I was like, well, you guys, clearly you know this person. The odds that you know this person are very slim. And the way that the message was written with this whole, can you tell me who it is? It was a bit of a red flag, and I was kind of pissed, honestly. So I went back with a reply that said, I know that you're connected to this person. I'm not giving you any information. I'm still taking advice and figuring out my course of action. Shove it up your butt, basically. And I blocked them. I didn't really want to start this off with a whole, social media, Facebook Messenger war. That wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to get my advice, send a proper message. So then I got a second message that was from the actual maker, who said the first person had reached out on their behalf and that there was no intention to cover up who they were, which I was like, but you did kind of cover it up by not saying who you were. If the person had come to me and said, "Hi, I'm from XYZ page and I've seen your post and I think we need to talk," I'd have been like, great, okay, here's the deal. You need to stop posting my pattern pieces around, you need to take down those posts, and yada yada yada, we would have solved it from there. But I just had this bad feeling that the initial messages, I didn't want to deal with them like that, so I just completely blocked them with the intention of sending emails instead. Because I felt that it would be easy to record, and harder to manipulate and delete emails. So I waited till Monday, because I needed to get, a little bit of advice, get help drafting letters up. And I sent 2 letters. The first letter was the cease and desist, but I'll mention that one later. And the second was a personal letter from my regular email account to them. Basically because obviously when you send cease and desist or any sort of legal documentation, any official stuff, you kind of have to leave the feeling out of it. It has to be, your party has done A, B and C, and so therefore we feel wronged and we want XYZ to happen to form a resolution. But I sent another letter basically to be like, I'm the human being behind the things that you have bought and the things that you're using, and this is how I feel. That seeing my pattern posted on Facebook for everyone to see was hurtful, and the fact that they'd built this page, this big beautiful page of beautiful items using things that they bought from me and never once mentioned where they got it from. And it feels a little bit sort of pompous to say it, almost, that I'd like to be credited, but at the end of the day that is something I ask for. And it became, normally I give it when I see my things being used, I usually give people a little nudge, but it's not really always a big deal. Sometimes I'll not really care too much, or I'll leave it and, it's not that big a deal. but the amount of posts, I went through and counted them, and there were over 200 posts. 200 posts using things that they bought from me and no mention, and at that point it felt like, to me, it has become a big deal to see all that. So they did reply to the personal letter. They said that they have my Anthro pattern, but they do not use it for anything other than gifts, as is allowed. Which, it almost felt like overcompensating, because my terms of service are you can use it for whatever you want, except factory things, and as long as you credit me. So, to say, well, we only use it for gifts, well, that's not the issue here. The issue is that you posted photographs of the pattern piece. And basically they were just denying, and the Facebook post is still there. I have asked multiple times for them to delete it, and it is still there at the time that I am talking right now. They did say they would stop using my embroidery files for commissions going forward. That they did say that they said that they do credit me, but that they credit me to the customer. And from the way it was written, I think the customer chooses from like a board of eyes, and then they say to the customer it's from this person, which, you know, it's cool, but it's not what I asked for. I asked for public credit. But they did deny sending files to the factory for the mass-produced plush. And as I've gone through the 3 that I know of and looked at them side by side, from the file to the to the finished plush, there has been changes made to the eyes. One of them looks almost exactly the same. I can't find any differences. The second that is by the other artist that I've spoken to, there were stars in the eyes, and the stars were removed in the factory plush. But everything else was the same. And then in mine, the star was kept. There's a star in the eye that was kept, but it feels like it's moved just a couple millimeters in towards the pupil. So, right now what I'm trying to figure out is, what I think, at some point, the files have been traced. The image from the file has been traced, and either the factory traced it to make their own files, or they traced it and sent the trace to the factory. I'm not sure which is worse, because either way they have taken my design and used it in a way I don't want it to be used. They've either traced it and passed it off as their own, or they've sent the file to a factory. I'm not sure which one I would be more upset about. All I know is I am upset. I spent the weekend crying in a bowl and eating ice cream and just feeling very, very sorry for myself. But really the main thing that I wanted, which was to be credited where my credit was due, and for the post to be put down, they haven't been done. I've just had a promise that they will stop using embroidery files going forward, which as of right now is probably the smallest of things, because I can't prove it yet. One thing, so onto the cease and desist was, I asked for several things, and obviously, as I've kept saying, I wanted the Facebook post of my pattern to be taken down. I wanted the post where my assets have been used to be credited, and because of the amount of times it had been used, and the fact that it had been used in a commercial setting, normally I would not ask this. But I felt like I wanted to ask them to stop using my files, to delete all files that they purchased from me and just stop. Because I felt like any trust that could have been fostered between us was gone. I couldn't trust them not to misuse the files. So I asked for that, and I also asked for the factory-made plush with my eyes to be paused in their listings, to be taken down until we could figure out what to do going ahead with any remaining stock. The last thing was one that I bandied around for a while. I wasn't sure whether it was fair to ask this, but again, as I've said, the magnitude of the use and the misuse in the factory, I asked for an apology to be made. I wanted them to apologise for using my files in a way that was wrong, that judging by the messages I'd received they were aware was wrong. And I did have it put into the letter that I was willing to, if they could provide a solution, we would talk about it, and I was willing to drop that part. If they'd come back and said, we will immediately stop using the files or took the listing down, let's talk about this, then I would have dropped that part. You know, it was just more of a, come on now, more about the attitude really than anything else. But as far as I know, someone else is handling the legal side of that for me, and as far as I know, I've not had any response on that front. I also put in the personal letter, I didn't put it in the cease and desist, it felt almost like by saying it would be blackmail, but I did tell them that I would be speaking to the artists that I had seen also being used to double check whether they were being misused as well, and that if they didn't take down the post that I would like them to take down, they didn't do the things I was asking for, like the credit and the stopping using the files, that I would make a post with the receipts, like an artist beware kind of post, because the community, the push community is, you know, I like to think that at the end of the day we have each other's backs. I have friends in the community that have just, I wouldn't be making this video if they hadn't been there. I would still be under the table crying. They've really helped me out. So to think that they were doing it to me and they're doing it to other people, it to me warranted that if they weren't going to stop, then I was going to make a public post saying, this is what they're doing, be careful, don't let them purchase your things. And as I've said a couple of times already, I haven't seen any change in the Facebook posts, and I haven't heard of any replies promising to make any of the changes. So I call that post, I don't want to call them out, but the warning to other pattern makers, I think it will be imminent. I blacked out all the names, but made a post saying somebody's posted photographs of my pattern, talking about it as if it's theirs, and I'm very upset. And I've had several, more than 3 people say that they had been wanting to get into digital selling patterns and stuff, but that this had scared them off, to see that other people were taking patterns, buying patterns and then misusing them based on the terms of use. It scared them off. And it also was kind of an upsetting thing to see. It's kind of disheartening to see, because I love making patterns, I love making things for other people to make things with. And if when people say to me I want to get into doing that, I'll tell them it's hard, I'll tell them it's a long job to get anything done, and the return is slow financially, but I would never tell someone, no, don't do it. I would always say, give it a go, try it, because it's fun and it can be something. We've had a pandemic for the last, 18 months? Over 18 months, and digital sales have kept food on my table and a roof over my family's head while post service were closed and while I couldn't send anything out or take any physical orders. It's a great thing to do, and to see the behaviour of buyers dishearten so many people, that was also very it's a bad feeling, it's not good. Bo! Shut up! What? So, there isn't really an end to this video, because the situation that prompted me to want to talk about credit and the difference between personal use, commercial use, licensing, that kind of thing, it's still ongoing and there's no resolution. I can't tell you the day was saved thanks to the Powerpuff Girls. So I don't really know how to end this, other than I do intend to fight and get them to take down the post I want them to take down. I really do want to avoid any sort of public call out. I really hate the idea of that. It doesn't feel fair to me. But also that I just feel let down, kind of, that the these sort of actions would make the community not want to continue providing patterns and making patterns and closing off a section of creativity to some creators because they're worried about the attitude of some of these people. I do intend to, if anybody wants it, to talk more about protecting your work and how to phrase, how to create digital items and how to protect yourself, because I do feel like having those terms of use in the manuals when you have the download and in the listing description. So when somebody is purchasing, they have a set of terms of service before and after purchasing to look back on and make sure they're using it right. So I think that having those terms has helped me have a leg to wobble around on while writing these legal letters and trying to get a resolution. Lost my train of thought. So, yeah, this isn't the last you've heard of me. I will be back with more patterns. I mean, this doesn't stop me from making patterns. I've actually, because of the fact they shared my Anthro pattern around, it's spurred me to, I'm going to be drafting out a new one. An updated one, a better one. You know, it's been 3 years. See what I can make now. I don't want to let it get me down, and without friends online, fellow plush makers, I think I'd be in a different place after finding out all that over this weekend. So, yeah, hopefully there'll be a resolution, and we can all go back to making cute things and being nice to each other. Bye.